Hi, I'm Paula Donnelly.
And I'm Pat Donnelly. Welcome to Sunday Morning Church at Elk River Lutheran.
In this crazy time, I like to call it pajama church. We really enjoy Elk River Lutheran Church. We found it warm, caring, and supportive. And we've only been members a year, but this church has given us the opportunity to really have fun with our faith. So we love beer and hymns. We love parking lot church. We've had a lot of really good experiences here, and we're glad that you're here with us. We'll see you soon.
What she said.
Hello, this is Lori, and I want to thank you for coming today.
Good morning, this is Linda Nielsen. I'm office manager here at Elk River Lutheran Church. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've got your bulletin all ready, whether it's on your device or you had a chance to print it out. Be part of the worship service with us, be in those chats and answer the questions, submit your prayer requests. Behind me is all your notes of appreciation you've sent in. I have kept them so that we as staff can stay encouraged during this time. Thank you so much. And to God be the glory. Have a blessed day.
Hi, I'm Keith Quammen. Welcome to Elk River Lutheran Church. Nice to have you here.
Hi, I'm Brian Harding, staff member at Elk River Lutheran Church. Nice to have you here. We do miss seeing any of you, obviously with what's going on, but we hope you stay healthy, live with God, and we'll be together soon again.
Good morning, I'm Gloria Stricker.
Hi, I'm Ron.
We're glad to be with you this morning.
Hi, I'm Karen Maher, and this is my husband, Harry.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Vaughn.
We are the Smiths. Welcome to worship at Elk River Lutheran Church. We are glad
to see you.
We're Deb and Greg Poliak, welcoming you to Elk River Lutheran Church.
We love living in beautiful Elk River, and one of the best things about it is our church.
During this pandemic, it's important to remember that it's the people that make Elk River Lutheran a church, not our building.
We hope you enjoy this online service.
Welcome to Elk River Lutheran. We're glad you're here.
We are Tom and Luann Wingard, and
Well, good morning and welcome to Elk River Lutheran Church online. We are glad that you are with us here this morning. I'm Pastor Nathan Mugas, pastor at Elk River Lutheran Church.
I'm Lisa Sampson, Director of Children, Youth, and Family Ministry.
Jeremy Hulquist, Minister of Congregational Care and Discipleship.
And I'm Taylor Quinn, Director of Music and Worship.
Fun fact, every time before we record or go live for worship, one of the things that we need to do is turn off the furnace fans so that we don't get that fan sound picked up by our very sensitive microphone. And so 10 seconds before we started, I said, uh-oh, the fans are still on. So Taylor is fast as lightning, and he got them. So we are glad, and hopefully as he is getting settled into his seat, you are getting settled in this morning for worship as we continue talking about David this morning a little bit more with this theme, Fear is a Liar. So we'll be hearing the story of David and Goliath and thinking about the role that fear plays in that story.
And if you'd like to follow along in the bulletin, you can find one on the website elkriverlutheran.org.
And if you're looking for an exciting and riveting time, join us for a coffee hour on our Zoom channel right after worship. The link for that is at elkriverlutheran.org.
And we would love to hear from you this morning. If you are on Facebook or Zoom, will you please say hi to us and to your fellow people? Tell us, just say hi and tell us where you're coming from and where you're at. So.
Absolutely. And so again, we are so glad that you're here with us for worship this morning, and we are going to begin this morning with some music.
You bet. Let us sing together. All who hunger, gather gladly. It is in our hymnal, and it's on our PDF as well. And yeah, we'll just do it.
See that God is good. All who hunger, never stranger, seeker be, a welcome guest. Come from restlessness and roaming, here in joy we keep the feast. We that once were lost and scattered, in communion love have stood. Taste and see the grace eternal, taste and see that God is good. All who hunger sing together, Jesus Christ is living bread. Come from loneliness and longing, here in peace we have been fed. Blessed are those who from this table live their days in gratitude. Taste and see the grace eternal, taste and see that God is good.
Thank you, Taylor. You couldn't even tell that you were winded from your little run before worship, so that's great. Well, once again, welcome to you. I can see we have had a few more people join, and so welcome. We're glad that you're with us for worship here this morning. And why don't we introduce ourselves once again, since some folks have just joined. I'm Pastor Nathan Mugas, pastor at Elk River Lutheran Church.
I'm Lisa Sampson, Director of Children, Youth, and Family Ministry.
Jeremy Hulkus, Minister of Congregational Care and Discipleship.
And I'm Taylor Quinn, the Director of Music and Worship.
And today, in a little bit, we'll hear the story of David and Goliath and explore this theme, fear is a liar, because David in the story conquers his fears, and then fear shows up again a little later in his story. But first, we want to start with a Psalm of David, Psalm 34. This is a psalm that's going to be read by one of our Elk River Lutheran Church members, Carrie Christensen, who is also currently serving as our church's president. And so let's hear Carrie read this psalm, Psalm 34.
Psalm 34, verses 1 through 10. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. O magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and delivered me from all my fears. Look to him and be radiant, so your faces shall never be ashamed. This poor soul cried and was heard by the Lord, and was saved from every trouble. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and delivers them. O taste and see that the Lord is good. Happy are those who take refuge in him. O fear the Lord, you his holy ones, for those who fear him have no want. The young lions suffer want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Here ends the reading.
Well, thank you, Carrie, for reading for us this morning. It's great. And our theme for this morning, like I said, is fear is a liar. And we will talk about how fear shows up in David's life in a couple instances in particular, his fight with Goliath, as well as what comes after that. But fear is also a word that shows up a couple of times in the psalm. I'll read a couple of verses in case you missed those. One is in verse 4. It says, I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. And then it shows up in a different way in verse 9. O fear the Lord, you his holy ones, for those who fear him have no want. And so fearing God, that verse 9 talks about, fearing God is something that shows up in the Psalms, but not only in the Psalms, at multiple points throughout the Bible. It talks about fearing God. And you good Lutheran confirmation students out there, and if you remember your confirmation days up here, one phrase that comes up in Luther's Small Catechism that relates right into this is that we are to fear and love God. And so that phrase gets repeated a little bit. And so I'll come at that question, or that phrase, we are to fear and love God, with another very good Lutheran question. What does this mean? What does this mean? So what do y'all think? What does it mean for us to fear and love God? This idea of fearing God that is so scriptural, what do we think of that? What do you all think of that? What do you think of that?
I was drilled into me by my confirmation pastor, Mike Rognes, that fear does not mean be afraid. It means to respect and to be in awe of and humbled by and all those things. So I learned that from 8th grade, 9th grade on.
Yeah. Same here. I learned that. I feel like I'm pretty sure that I learned it during confirmation, because actually when I was growing up, we did double dipping. Like, we went to this,
like with your intinction?
With our yes, with our worshiping. No, we attended the Lutheran church that my grandparents grew up or attended, but we also attended a charismatic church, and so at the same time I was getting like a little more information from both. And So I think it was probably about that time too that I learned about fearing God isn't about cowering and in fear, but respecting and loving.
One of the things I think about is in the books and the movies, for that matter, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, C.S. Lewis's stories that are really allegorical of the life of Christ and this God presence. And so in those books and the movies, Aslan is this God figure, the big lion who shows up. He's this kind of God and Christly figure. And when they talk about, and this you see more in the books, it describes when Aslan is around, how the kids feel. It's this like sense of awe and wonder with a little bit of fear. Like, they love when Aslan is around, and they get to run their fingers through his fur, but they're also like nervous. Like there's a sense of awe and fear that come with it. And it even says in one of the books at one point, one of the kids, I can't remember which kid it is, says, Aslan is not a tame lion. You know, they're talking about how we love him, but Aslan is not a tame lion. And it's a way of thinking about the fact that part of what makes us maybe fear God is that we can't control God. You know, the things that we can actually control in our lives, we're not really usually too scared of those because we've got control. But God is the ultimate thing that we can't control, you know. And so there is this sense of kind of fear that, you know, God is not a tame God. We don't have control. And that can be scary.
Mm-hmm. At the end of the first movie, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, Lucy is standing with someone as they're watching Aslan leave. Yeah. And she says something about him being wild, but she also said, but he is good. Yeah. And I've always loved that part, because wild can be scary for us, like what you're talking about, where there's not control. But if you know that there's a goodness to it, it's a little bit more peace-giving. Absolutely. You know, a little more comfort in that.
Because we can know that God is on our side. God loves us deeply and truly. And yet, God is a little wild, and we are not in control. Yeah, and those are paired perfectly. Love and fear God. You know, that's why Luther pairs them, I think.
Well, and I think that it shows us, like, what we fear is what we value on the opposite side. Like, if I fear getting hurt, then I value feeling safe. Or if I fear death, then I value life. And I think the sense of what, fear drives us to be reminded about what we hold as sacred or holy or personal or important in that space, that fear kind of has that balance too.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to explore fear some more in the context of the David story, because in the story, David both conquers fear and bows to fear in a sense. And so we're going to hear the David story once again here today with Story Time with Taylor. Taylor has the Spark Storybook Bible here with him. This is a story, it comes from 1 Samuel chapter 17. It's verses 32 through 49 roughly, and it is a really long reading, and so the Spark Storybook Bible is a little shorter, but this is also a little more probably in line with the Sunday school version that we many of us grew up with. And if you want the more full version and to get more into the details, we did that earlier this week in Sacred Wit and in the podcast, and so you can find a lot more explanation that goes deeper into the actual text and the text surrounding them. But for this morning, just to enter into this David and Goliath story, the Spark Storybook Bible gets us there in a wonderful way. So, story time with Taylor. Everyone sit crisscross applesauce.
Oh my gosh.
And we can all, I'm not going to sit crisscross applesauce here and try to on this chair. I would
Not
fall
on
right
these
off. But we will hear this story, and for many of you, I think it will be familiar. But as you hear it, think about, okay, what have I forgotten about this story? What's standing out that's maybe new, even as we hear it in the children's version? Let's give it a listen.
All right, here's the story of David and Goliath. King Saul and his army looked out from their mountain hideout. Their enemies, the Philistines, were camped on the opposite mountain. In the valley between stood Goliath, the tallest man Saul had ever seen. "Who will fight me?" Goliath roared, waving his spear. "Who can face the mighty Goliath?" he shouted, lifting his sword. Saul and his army were afraid. They could not win against the Philistines. They could not beat Goliath. Surely they would be captured and become slaves. A beam of sunlight bounced off of Goliath's bronze helmet. His voice shook the leaves in the trees. All the birds hid behind their branches. "Send out your best warrior," Goliath ordered. "Let him fight against me. If I win, you will be our slaves. If your soldier wins, we will serve you and your God." Saul waited. No one stepped forward to take Goliath's challenge. Saul felt a small tug on his sleeve. Looking down, he saw David, a young shepherd boy. "I will do it, King Saul," David said. "I will fight Goliath." "You are a boy. How can you beat a gigantic man like Goliath?" Saul turned to go. "Wait, King Saul," David said. "God protects me from the wolves and bears that go after my sheep. God will protect me now, too." David reached down and picked up 5 smooth stones. In his right hand, he carried the same sling he used to chase away the wolves and wild animals. Saul patted David's head and pointed down the rocky path leading to the valley. Goliath laughed when he saw David. "You are the warrior they send out against me?" David slipped his hand into his pouch and selected a stone. I am not afraid of your spear and sword, Goliath," David said. "God will help me." David rushed toward Goliath, swinging his sling. The smooth stone flew through the air and hit Goliath in the forehead. Down, 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 Goliath fell. Down fell his sword. Down fell his spear. Down fell his mighty shield. David picked up Goliath's bronze helmet from the ground and held it high in the air. Saul and all his soldiers rose up with a shout. David, a small shepherd boy, had beaten the mighty Goliath. When the Philistines saw that Goliath had fallen, they were afraid and ran away. Trusting in God gave David courage when he needed it most.
All right, thank you, Taylor. And so like I had said at the beginning of that story, I'm guessing that for many of us, this is a familiar story. It's one that is almost always taught in Sunday school, and it's one of those, even we have the phrase, it's a David and Goliath story whenever someone, little takes on someone big, the underdog, kind of a classic underdog story. But so I'm just kind of curious, we're going to play with this idea of fear, but even before we just get into the fear stuff, as you hear the story once again this morning, whether you've heard it recently, like we all did, maybe those of you who listened to Sacred Wit earlier this week or the podcast have heard this story more recently. Others maybe haven't heard it for years and years and years. But so think about what is it that stood out about the story to you today in this hearing? What did you hear that maybe it's even a little different than the Sunday school version you remember? Details you hear in just the retelling of it here this morning.
Go ahead.
I think of his age because we're taught that he's a little boy, or a young boy, and I always just said 8, 10, 12 years old.
Well, and they said it in here even too.
Right,
so.
he's young.
Yeah.
But he really wasn't that young in his circumstances and things, so that makes me curious.
Yeah, I think about that too. I also think about the looking at it. If you go back if you don't read the Spark story, look at the Bible and read it for all its nuances. There's so much more to that than just this little guy beating a big guy.
Yeah.
Right. When I think that sense of fear, like who is doing the fearing? Like it begins with the Israelite army and King Saul, being afraid to death of this Goliath creature. And David goes, yeah, I got this. Like it's so nonchalant that this little person goes after this big giant of a person and then knocks him down. And then all of a sudden the Philistine army is terrified of David. This fear changes shape.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is. I really would recommend if you want to go to the Bible and read the story, I'd recommend that because there are a lot of details that get left out, partially because it's long. Like one of my favorite scenes in the story is David putting on Saul's armor. There's this great scene that when David volunteers, then Saul says, okay, well, you can even wear my armor and carry my sword and my spear. Well, none of it fits him. He's too little. And so it's like this silly scene where he's trying to walk and he can't even walk in it. And so he takes it off and he says, no, I'll just use this slingshot. That's good enough for me. And there are just some of those little nuances. Even the fact that he's only on the battlefield because he's bringing lunch to his brothers who are actually in the army. He's supposed to be back watching the sheep that night, and probably was back watching the sheep that night. And one last detail I think is so funny in the Spark Storybook version. It talks about him hoisting the helmet of Goliath. It leaves out the fact that kids cover your ears, like earmuffs, right? Like Goliath's head is in that helmet. What? Yeah, verse 50. We didn't even include that one, but there's some real gory elements of this story that it's a battle. This is war, and war is ugly, and there's some ugly parts to this story too.
Yeah, and it doesn't go into how long it had been going on either. That it had been going on for a long time, and David had seen this over and over again, and finally said, "No, I'll do this."
Right. I think it's 40 days.
Yep.
Very appropriate number for the Bible. Shows up a lot. 40 days that Goliath has come out every day, taunting them. Just instilling this fear. And saying, you can't beat me. And they believed it.
Right, and I think it's, the fascinating, the way the story is written, you don't catch the courage that comes from David too. Like, everybody else is afraid. And David simply just goes, okay, grabs 5 stones as his shepherd's staff and runs into battle. Grabbing 5 stones to run into war just seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
But there's something about that. He trusts and knows that this is going to do the thing that it's meant to do, but that confidence in who God has called him to be also shows up in that too.
Yeah. And so that's this theme, fear is a liar. That's what I think we really want to wrestle with. What role does fear have in our lives? In David's life, like you say, he conquered that fear. He trusted that God would be with him, that he could conquer this giant, and so that fear got pushed aside. Well, if we fast forward in the story, in just the next chapter, over the next chapter, David gets really popular. Of course, people think it's great that he killed Goliath. He becomes kind of a hero of the people. Ultimately, it seems kind of becomes a general type person leading other battles. And so all of a sudden, he's famous throughout the whole nation. Everyone loves him, including Saul, who thinks, hey, this guy is great. Everyone's saying David's the bravest, he's the best, he's the strongest, he's not scared of anything, he's the best. And then Saul starts to think, wait a second, I'm the king, I'm the best. And in the background of this story is what we have talked about already. What we all know is that David has been chosen to be the next king. He's been anointed by the prophet Samuel. God has, the hand of God is upon him. And so that's a part of why he's doing so well. Saul doesn't really know that, but he starts to realize there's something about David. And so whether it's jealousy starts to grow or fear of David taking over the throne starts to grow. And what happens next then is Saul tries to kill David. More than once. And so early on then, that first time, David kind of sticks around because Saul has a change of heart, but ultimately then, David will flee out of fear that Saul, his own king, will kill him. And so there is this fascinating, different ways of thinking about and talking about fear in this story. Fear is self-preservation, which is good and healthy. David gets out of there before Saul kills him, and yet also fear that David conquers and goes and takes on the giant. And so I think in our lives, what does fear look like? How do we see that fear that is good and life-preserving, like keeps us alive, but also then where does fear show up that's not so life-giving or preserving? Fear and anxiety and worry that just serves to raise our blood pressure and isn't good for us or for anyone around us. I think we do experience those kinds of fear. So what does that look like? What does that look like for you all?
The thing that I first thought of talking about Goliath and Saul, and he wasn't afraid of Goliath, but he didn't have a relationship with Goliath. It was just this figure across the valley. But he had a relationship with Saul. And I think about in our own lives, people that I'm afraid of having an argument or being afraid of somebody I actually know or have a relationship with is much scarier than coronavirus, somebody I don't know, So maybe that plays something in his fear and wanting to run away.
Go ahead.
Just not still forming.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about social media too.
Yeah.
Like I think
sure.
We don't experience fear so much when we're disconnected from people. Like when you're on a computer screen, it's so easy to do your thing without fear. But when you get in front of human beings, real life interactions, there's an element of fear that keeps us from doing certain things, probably because of preservation, but also perhaps that keeps us from doing the right thing too,
I think this is a time in life with a global pandemic and plenty of real actual things to be fearful of, to think about, what are those things in our lives that are just ratcheting up that anxiety and causing more fear than is at all helpful. I think social media needs to be just turned off sometimes, especially if it's just causing a cycle of fear. That's not good for us or for anyone around us. It goes way beyond self-preservation, and you just get kind of sucked into this. And I think that's so easy to do, especially in this time when we can't be around people who bring us down or be busy doing other things that would maybe calm us a little more.
Right. I think that's for our family right now. That's where we're dwelling the most is Governor Walz's school mandate that wasn't really a mandate. Like we're struggling with this because Ellie and Weston both have heart issues, and those become part of our conversation of what risks do we take? Like how do we do this school year? How do we not? Like what are our options? And I think for that ratchets up that fear, but I think it also is pushing us more to the faith. Like, we've got to trust that something's going to happen here, and sort of live in this weird, ambiguous, fear and trust and the balance between. I think it becomes part of wrestling with these big questions.
Right. I mean, I think that's a great example. I think that's certainly pertinent for me. Where a month ago it was like, oh gosh, what's going to happen in schools? And there was a point where it's like, well, we don't know. I mean, we just don't really know. The announcement though is going to be made. What is it, July 27th? Or I mean, I remember that date was set so long back, and we thought, oh, by that day we'll know what to expect for the fall. I can't wait. So let's not even worry about it till then. Well, then the date comes, and we realize, okay, this is more complex than just yes or no, go or no go. And so we kind of have to now continue to live in that uncertainty, and whether it's schools or in-person worship, whatever. Uncertainty is a real good fear monger, isn't it? Like those when we don't know what to expect, like that's scary.
I was even thinking too, like the anxiety produced going out to get groceries right now, or going to Target or gas, or like. There's something different about going to those places now than I think really has ever been.
It's hard as human beings to experience emotions and not let the negative effects take their course. Fear can be paralyzing. But the thing is that I think we as human beings, we can choose to be paralyzed by it or be proactive about it. I love what you said about fear when we were talking about it before the David and Goliath story, that fear can tell us about ourselves. It can tell us what we value. And if we look at fear as not a negative, paralyzing thing, but we look at it as an emotion that tells us who we are and make a positive stand on it, looking at it, perspective, it can be a really good thing. It tells us who we are. There was a time in my life that I realized that I was afraid a lot, and it was paralyzing. But then there was a pivotal certain series of events in my life that made me realize I don't have to let this be paralyzing. I can let it be a catalyst to action and proactive, behavior.
I know you're not paralyzingly afraid of performing musically, because I've seen you do it so much that you couldn't live like that, I know. But I am kind of curious, what role does, because fear isn't just these, big major, pandemic scares, but like, what role does fear play in your musical life even? A lot of people are pretty scared about getting up in front of people, but you do it all the time and perform.
No, fear, I don't get nervous so much anymore. I think the biggest thing for me that I fear is not being prepared. Because I've done music, there's some things that I can just do and throw out because of the skill level. But for me, I become more afraid if I know that I haven't spent time in the music, so like preparedness. I do know that other musicians and other performers and even like speakers in public, you get nervous. And I had a colleague who would always tell her students, you're nervous because you care about what you're doing. And so I took that philosophy with me, but I also kind of morphed it into, it's okay to be nervous, embrace it, practice it. You can't, that's what I said earlier about, you can't let fear be paralyzing. Embrace it and live in it, and then you'll be able to manage it better. Because it is good and bad at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's so true on so many levels, right? I mean, that's not just for, doing music or performing or anything. I mean, I think we can live into those and explore and grow in those areas that cause us fear. I think, the funny example I think about is like driving a race car. Like, sounds really fun to me, but like to actually be in a NASCAR race where you're driving 200 miles an hour and there's people on all sides of you, like, I would be scared to death because I know I can't do it well. Like, I would crash, and they should all be scared if I was out there, right? And yet, those drivers aren't scared because they've practiced. It's just like getting up and, when you know that you've practiced it, you're ready to do it. And I think that can be applied not to just like certain, specific situations, like I'm going to be driving a car like Jeff Gordon. I can't think of more current race car drivers, but what are the other things that cause fear and anxiety? Even just relationships are being, oh, every time I talk to so-and-so, my blood pressure goes up and I get nervous. Okay, well, what are the things that I can practice, going into those conversations to conquer that fear even?
Right. I think that's one interesting thing. Carolyn Mitzuk, I'm going to paraphrase her thing, but sure. David already has the skills. He'd already been a shepherd defending his sheep against lions, wolves, and bears. To take that confidence and trust who God is into the next level.
Yes.
To say, yeah, I'm going to use those gifts that God has given me to do the task that we need to.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly profound too.
Oh, absolutely. That, just because we haven't done something before doesn't mean we aren't equipped to face that thing, whatever it is. Yeah. Like David had never fought a giant before, but he had faced lions and tigers and bears.
Oh my.
Yes. And that served him well. None of us have ever lived through a global pandemic before, but we've all been through stuff. And we can use some of those experiences and the growth that we've experienced from that, and can carry that to help process this. Yeah. No, I think that's a great thought. Well, fear is a liar. We know that. So we're going to hear the song in a moment, Fear is a Liar. But first, let's go back to this psalm. We've been doing these psalm challenges where we challenge you to enter into the Psalms. And so Psalm 34 is our psalm for this week, and we're going to leave you with just the first 4 verses. But we encourage you to as many times this week as you can, dwell in the words of this psalm, Psalm 34.
I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth.
My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad.
O magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt in his name together.
I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and delivered me from all my fears.
So this, moving on to the next part of our worship service, is you're going to watch a video, a music video called Fear is a Liar, and it features musicians. It features this guy right next to me, Jeremy Hallquist, Justin Howland, Chuck Anderson, Cara Hennig, Emily Rotz, and myself. It's a great song. And Jeremy, will you say a little something? See, Jeremy had chosen this song when we were doing the series, and so I wanted to ask him why. Why was this part of?
Yeah, I think so. I went through kind of weird times in my life of having to learn to trust and lean into God when the world felt like it was against me, and so feeling that sense of fear and that sense of hopelessness. And the lines in this song, it'll rob your rest, steal your happiness. Fear will drive you to places that you don't want to be. And leaning in and trusting God when it matters, I think that was the place where this song came on the radio one day and just shook me. And since then, I've been kind of just enamored with the words and lyrics. So we invite you to hear and listen to what God is saying in the midst of this.
Thanks.
When he told you you're not good enough, when he told you you're not right, when he told you you're not strong enough to put up a good fight, when he told you you're not worthy, when he told you you're not loved, when he told you you're not beautiful, you'll never be enough. Take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear is a liar. He will rob your rest, steal your happiness. he told you you were troubled, you'll forever be alone. When he told you you should run away, you'll never find a home. When he told you you were dirty and you should be ashamed. When he told you you could be the one, the grace could never change. Fear, he is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear, he is a liar. He will rob your rest, steal your happiness, cast your fear in the fire. 'Cause fear, he is a liar. Let the fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. 'Cause fear, he is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your steps. And fear, he is a liar. He will rob your rest, steal your happiness, cast your fear in the fire. 'Cause fear, he is a liar. 'Cause fear, he is a liar.
Well, thank you to you musicians and Taylor for pulling it together. So good, so good. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We'll continue worship now with a time of prayer, and we invite you to post those prayers on our Facebook feed, our Zoom feed, or at elkriverlutheran.org on our prayer request line. So as we do that, we invite you to sing Taste and See.
Taste and see, the goodness of the Lord. Oh, taste and see, the goodness of the Lord. I will bless the Lord all the times. Praise shall
Gathered as a whole people of God in all corners of the world, we gather together and pray. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for this day, for the beauty of your creation that holds us comfortably in places of peace and rest. Lord, we entrust to you the fears of your people, those worries and concerns that hold us deeply. We pray that you would watch over us and that you would watch over the things going on in this world, that you would grant comfort and wisdom and strength and courage in times of deep uncertainty. Lord, we lift before you the prayers of this community, the prayers of everyone gathered around. We name especially today Todd Bursch and the family and friends in his passing. We give you thanks for this day and all that you have created. Remember us in your kingdom, O gracious God, and teach us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This time we continue with our offering. And I want to just say a word of thanks for those who are able to financially give to the church at this time. And if you would like to do so, there are those three main ways of doing that. One is to give online. There is a link in the comments on Facebook. You can find that on our website at elkriverlutheran.org. Also, we have a mailbox outside, which of course receives mail through the U.S. Postal Service, but also offering can be dropped in that mailbox anytime as well. It is locked and secure and emptied regularly. And then finally, I just want to again say a word of thank you for your love and support of this church and its ministries, for everything from, yes, the financial giving, but to the sharing of these videos and the participation in the music and just showing up for one another, not just showing up for online worship, but showing up for one another and making those phone calls and continuing to be this congregation, this community, trusting in God's grace and accepting joyful community, serving God and neighbor. It's a challenging time. But we're doing it, and we're doing it together. So thank you for that. I want to share just now this word of prayer, this offering prayer that I shared before. It is this prayer that uses that imagery of grains of wheat being scattered on the hill, gathered together to make one loaf of bread, this body of Christ that we are all a part of. And so let's pray together this prayer. Merciful God, as grains of wheat scattered upon the hills were gathered together to become one bread, so let your church be gathered from the ends of the earth into your kingdom. For yours is the glory through Jesus Christ, now and forever. Amen. So as we come to the close of worship here before our sending hymn, receive this blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's face shine on you with grace and mercy. May the Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Let us end with singing Blessed Assurance together. This is a little bit different arrangement, so don't be surprised if there's a little different nuances. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchase of God, born of his Spirit, washed in his blood. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story,
perfect submission, all is at rest. I in my Savior am happy and blessed, watching and waiting, looking above, filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Well, again, thank you for being here with us this morning. As we go, let us share just a couple of announcements as you go, some things to look forward to.
Something we have set up for you to enjoy is the story of David in a different form. So if you come to the church, start at the front entrance door, and you can work your way around the building to the back, and there are 6 stations where you can read a little different story, and there's some challenges for you to do. And we invite everybody to do this. You don't have to be, you could be a kid of 5 years old up to 99 years old. Everybody can participate. Take pictures and post them on our Facebook group page too. That'd be great to see.
Yeah, and so that's, if you haven't joined that Facebook group, the Elk River Lutheran Church group, we encourage you to do that. You want to give us one example of what we might expect to find, or do you want it all to be a surprise?
Oh no, I can, there's a little physical challenge that's not too hard, but there's some guessing games and some math might be involved, which I would do terrible at, but there's some things out there and some creative ways to learn more about David and have fun.
All right.
So you probably know this, but on Wednesdays we post a video of us doing Sacred Wit, which is kind of a Bible study format, between 35 minutes to 45, sometimes an hour, but we try to keep it within 45 minutes. So Sacred Wit, tune in on Facebook for that, but also look for our podcast. We have now taken our Sacred Wit and our Sunday morning services and turn them into podcasts. So if you go to your favorite podcast place, look up Elk River Lutheran Church, Powered by Love, and you'll find it there, and you can take us with you the rest of the week and learn more about all these stories that we're talking about on Sunday and Wednesdays.
Yeah. And also, I'm going to interject, jump into our Zoom coffee hour right after worship, a link at elkriverlutheran.org, and join us for coffee hour fellowship. Just tell us what's good and great about your day.
Yeah, I love it. Good. Well, thank you once again for joining us, and we will see you again later this week and next Sunday. So go in peace. Share the good news.
We will. Thanks be to God.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We had a great time at Pajama Church and hope you meet with us every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Come and have fun in your faith.
Bye now.
We hope to see you next week. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you for joining us for worship today. Please join us over on Zoom for our fellowship hour. You can see our normal fellowship hour is a little empty, so there's no seats here for you, but we've got lots of seats over on Zoom. We'll see you over there.
All right. Thanks for coming. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us at worship today.
Same here. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us for worship. Bye. Thank you so much for coming and watching our service online.
Cause fear, he is a liar.